But it is clear in the last 10 years that Christianity in particular, and Judaism too, I would say, have been the ones that are either not protected or attacked because of our values, where others within the faith community, the moment something happens to them, oh man, every politician rises up to their defense, and it becomes a political thing. And that's a whole other story we could talk about. And this isn't conspiracy or woe is us. This is reality. These are facts.
Yeah.
These are things that have happened in our nation. It is very, very clear that there is an antichrist spirit that operates, particularly in the parties on the left. And
100%.
And they have stated that.
Well, hey, you're watching What Was That About? Thank you for joining us for today's episode. My name is Moses Khan. I am with the lead pastor here at All People's Church, Dr. Tony Saldano. How you doing, Pastor?
Good. Welcome back.
Thank you. Yes.
I had to sit in that chair.
That's right.
For a few weeks, and while we recorded with Dr. Lindsay. By the way, those programs are
fantastic,
doing so well.
Yeah, great.
As we talk about psychology and spirituality and bridging the gap. That it was very, very good. Yeah.
Very
welcome
good.
back.
Thank you. It's good.
You
to be
were
back.
away for a little. Didn't you go away? I think you did.
I did. Went to Mexico.
Yeah.
Speaking of, we're considering moving there now. I mean, is this going out tonight? This is going out tonight. Okay, so this is like hot off the press. Rough day today.
Well, for some, I guess.
For some, I guess. But yeah, elections. The liberals have taken the country again.
Still.
They have it still. Yes. Yeah. I want to get your thoughts. Obviously, I think most of us were very surprised by this. We really thought, there's going to be a change. We were really hoping, praying. And even the general, census and opinions of people seemed to be that they were ready and wanting a change. And yet we find ourselves in this situation once again.
Yeah. That in itself, that at ground level, if you will, there was all this discussion, and even the early, the early polling that went out, and I'm not going to create conspiracy. It's interesting, what you hear, and then the results you see that they're very different.
Yeah.
But hey, we live in a quote unquote democratic state, and so I guess the people have spoken. If the people have spoken, Now they're still, at the time of this filming, they're still counting and the rest of it. So they're not sure if the liberals are going to get majority or minority. Minority would be obviously better for us, but that's still happening. So where are you at? What are your thoughts around? The results and where we're at, the state of the country. Yeah, we have, we have a responsibility. Obviously, our first responsibility is to look at things from a spiritual perspective. Where is God? Where is God in the midst of all this? And by the way, no matter who is in power, we believe that God is ultimately sovereign and in control. We know that the country belongs to God.
Yeah.
We know that it has many prophetic words that are spoken over it. When we look in the Old Testament, particularly, we see the nation of Israel. There were good kings and good governments and bad governments, and yet even in exile, God, ruled through all of it, and His will and purposes were done. And so we believe that no matter who is in power, that is certainly going to be done. However, depending on who is power depends on how the church does, how the people do.
Yeah.
And, this has been a government for the last 10 years that, they make no bones about it. They are not exactly friendly to Christ or the gospel. We have seen atrocities in our country, the burning of churches, if we go back to COVID, pastors being arrested. There's no question our values when it comes to things like abortion, homosexuality, they are under attack. We're under pressure to capitulate, to, bow to the values, what they call the values of the nation.
Yeah.
And so that makes it very difficult to preach the gospel and to, live your life as a believer in a quote unquote Christian country.
Yeah, and that's the tough part, right? Because we've gone through, for the last 10 years, it seems like the church has been just dragged through the dirt. And so now we're kind of like, it's almost like we were hopeful, and then that hope was kind of just like snatched away from us. And so even as the church, like, I wonder what like our position should be. Of course, we believe God is sovereign, God is in control, and God sets one up and puts one down, and the rest of it. But at the same time, there, like, when hope is snatched, like, you know what I'm saying. There comes like this, like, I don't know, dread almost to go, wow, like what's in store for the church now?
Yeah, and Pastor Mo, not only the church. Think about, there's a lot of anger in our country. There's a lot of division. There's a lot of hatred.
Yeah.
The new prime minister has said he's going to be the prime minister of everyone. Well,
yes,
those are beautiful words. I'm going to be I'm going to be there for everybody, which is that is exactly the opposite of how they have ruled. And this is factual. We're not creating this stuff. Yeah. This is the truth. They divide, they conquer, they set one up against another, and we see it within our country. And so this is the other aspect of it. When people don't have hope or they're frustrated, then clearly they turn their anger, into violence. Yeah. We're even watching. I don't know if you've watched these. There's a couple of viral videos of one was in Kelowna, where these golfers just get into this like slugfest.
Oh, I haven't seen this.
On the golf course, like and another one, a golfer attacked a marshal, like in golf, like things are boiling over. You know what I mean? It's not getting better.
Yeah.
It's getting worse. Now, to your point, I think when the church, when God's people lose hope and they fall into despair, then they're not as active in their faith. They're almost, they almost have this, que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. And rather than occupying until he comes, we just go, well, we're going to just continue to give up territory because it's a landslide against us and the odds are against us. And it's a defeatist mentality. And if we're not careful, then that'll be the prevailing sentiment.
Yeah.
And in some ways, and I mean, you spoke about this in a Bible study, Jesus talked about this, right? That the love of many would grow cold, that iniquity will abound. And so that becomes overwhelming spiritually and psychologically. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, no, it's true, because you become, you begin to live defeated, and so, there's well, what's the point and what's the use and the rest of it. And it is tough because, it's like, well, our voices aren't heard anyway. So what's the point of all this? And yet the Bible calls us to continue to have faith and to live bold and active lives. And, I guess the hopeful side of this is we have seen a progression towards more of a conservative. I know Ontario, for instance, our province is largely conservative, and so we are still
provincially. You mean
provincially? Right. Sorry, we are still seeing, or have seen, I guess, out of this, even though we didn't get the victory. There is more of a shift towards the conservative mindset,
right?
And so maybe in terms of the generations that are to come, and maybe there's a little bit of hope there.
Yeah. Now, I want to clarify, when you say we didn't get the victory, so we're not a political party.
Yes.
And there will be those that will point to certain things.
Yes.
Like abortion, for example, which Pierre Poilievre refused to address. And as a matter of fact, he said, a woman has a choice. So there will be those that will say, oh, yeah, you guys are supporting, this party, and yet they have anti-biblical views. And so really, in my mind, this election was more about the best of the worst. It was almost about voting against something than voting for something. And so when we say the victory, what we're saying is, at least, the conservatives were not talking about the removal of, charity status and coming after the churches, if you will. And the truth is, people say, well, wouldn't that be all places of worship? Like, you would think so, but it is clear in the last 10 years that Christianity in particular, and Judaism too, I would say, have been the ones that are either not protected or attacked because of our values, where others within the faith community, the moment something happens to them, oh man, every politician rises up to their defense, and it becomes a political thing. And that's a whole other story we could talk about. And this isn't conspiracy or woe is us. This is reality. These are facts.
Yeah.
These are things that have happened in our nation. It is very, very clear that there is an antichrist spirit that operates, particularly in the parties on the left. And
100%.
And they have stated that. As a matter of fact, there were times where they just said, if you believe, if you're pro-life or you have these values, don't even run for our party. So what does that tell you? That they're saying these things, Yeah. And then, of course, we don't have time today to go into their platforms per se, but this is the reality. So it was almost like it's a vote against something than necessarily saying, hey, there's one amazing party, because, even on the conservative side, they do things that we don't agree with either.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. What are your thoughts on, Carney there, some of the statements that he made? I mean, you mentioned one that he's going to be the prime minister of all people.
Yeah.
One of the things he said is that he's going to make sure that he works with all the parties, and that, the division that we've seen in the past amongst parties, he's going to try to, work out. He's stated, hey, I'm not Justin Trudeau. I'm my own person, and I have different ideas and whatever. What are your thoughts on that rhetoric?
Right. Yeah, for the last 10 years, he was behind the scenes consulting Trudeau. Trudeau handpicked him and brought him in.
Yeah.
Listen, you need to read his book. He has a book. Yeah. He is a globalist. He is an elitist. He would fit really well into the one world government. He is the poster child, for that. He's highly educated, by the way.
Yeah.
He believes in big spending. Big spending brings, more cost and deficits, which brings more taxation.
Yeah.
And brings more slavery, because you can never get under the burden.
Yep.
I mean, even now, when you consider the debt, the millions and millions of dollars that we just pay in interest, never mind, the debt. And you know that because you're a new homeowner. Every time you're making payments, you're like, oh, look how much I'm paying in interest, but my principal's not going down.
Right.
Well, that's the whole thing, to keep you enslaved, right? Keep you working, keep taxing people, and then those that somehow can get ahead a little bit, or they're entrepreneurial, well then, quote unquote, they have this social responsibility to pay the bill for everybody else. And by the way, there's some truth to that, but this idea that, while others are on welfare, don't do their fair share, are drugged out and everything else, that those that are diligent have to pay the bill for everybody else.
Yeah.
That in itself is very discouraging and deflating, but this is exactly who he is. And so this concept of, we have to share the wealth, amongst people, among the nations. Like when you look at all the money that leaves Canada, where we can't even take care of our own people. Well, this is him. And by the way, go read his book. I'm not stating this. Go read his book. Yeah. This is who he is. World Economic Forum. He's a globalist. He's an elitist. He's green to the hills, right? So it's protect the earth at all costs. And that's who he is. Now, let me ask you a question. As a young person, I'm on one end of the spectrum. You're on the other. Like what are your thoughts? I mean, you're probably gonna be having children, down the road here, and like, what are your thoughts about the election, the country, the direction of the country?
Yeah, it is wild. It's confusing for sure, because I think there is the younger generation is now leaning more towards traditional mindsets. And if you have conversation with young people, even on social media, there is this rise towards more conservative and traditional values, which we don't really see reflected in the overall country. And so this might be, I don't know if this is a terrible thought to have, but it's, I think as one generation, and this might not be the best wording, but dies off, and a new generation arises, I am hopeful that there are amongst the new generation more conservative and traditional values, that the foolishness of what has existed for so long and what has been tolerated for so long is now being questioned and challenged by the younger generation, because they're asking a lot of questions, and they like the more authentic and simplified. And so when I look at our country, it's like a mixture of disappointment, and yet I'm hopeful for what is next. And so if we could just be a little bit, for the little while, be resilient and not give up ground, and stay straight, stay faithful, stay bold, and voice our opinions, I think we might be all right.
Well, we need more people like you. Now, from a statistic standpoint, only 67% of the population voted. They're saying that many of the youth did not vote, which would have gone probably to a conservative vote. And so this is what happens when people don't vote, and they just rely on the system to kind of take care of itself. And this is what happens. So you know what? We need people like you. We need great young people that are great examples, that'll be decent and righteous and will lead in the right direction. Because otherwise we're headed in the wrong direction. But for us, we're going to continue to believe God, trust God, preach the gospel, do what we are called to do. And we'll trust the Lord with the rest. I don't know. Maybe the nation is under judgment. Maybe God has had enough of being mocked in this country and his values, his word being dragged, maybe even drugged through the streets, and God's going to deal with it. Ultimately, God's going to deal with it.
100%.
Because he's not going to, ultimately, he doesn't deal very kindly with the pride of man.
So true. So true. Hey, listen, thank you for joining us for today's episode. Let us know in the comment section what you think. What are your thoughts? We'd love to hear from you. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe, like this video, share it with a couple people you know. But please comment, let us know your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks, Pastor, for this conversation.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, God bless you. We'll see you next time.